Welcome to Breaking the Line, the ECNL podcast, a bi-weekly look at all things ECNL. Normally, the discussion is led by ECNL President and CEO Christian Lavers and ECNL VP and Chief of Staff Doug Bracken. Mr. Bracken has taken a well-deserved vacation, so on today's show, Christian Lavers will take a 20,000 feet view of ECNL Boys with ECNL Boys Commissioner Jason Kutney as they talk about the pathway, culture, competition, and so much more. And they do that after we go around the league.
The ECNL is proud to introduce a new segment to the Breaking the Line podcast. It's called Around the League. Each podcast, veteran sports broadcaster Dean Linke will take you around the ECNL, highlighting achievements and news about current players, alumni, teams, coaches, clubs, and more to give our loyal listeners everything they want to know about the state of the ECNL in less than 2 minutes. So let's get rolling. Here's Dean.
ECNL Girls is fresh off their winter Florida and Texas events, which saw more than 1,000 coaches in attendance for each of the three-day events. On the professional and international stage, ECNL and SoCal Blues alumni Trinity Rodman signed a record-breaking contract to remain with the Washington Spirit in the NWSL. The U.S. Youth National Team also recently announced the U17 roster for the EBERCUP, featuring 19 current ECNL players. The ECNL Boys continue to see an impact on the professional ranks as well, as 30 alumni were selected in the 2026 MLS Super Draft, representing 12 of the 15 ECNL Boys conferences. The league also set a record number of collegiate soccer participants, with more than 1,850 alumni competing in college soccer in 2025. Looking ahead, the stage is set for the inaugural National Super Cup, set to take place at ECNL Indianapolis in April. Concord Fire Platinum, Dallas Texans, Legends FC, and Crossfire Academy will battle it out, aiming to raise the Super Cup trophy at the largest ECNL Boys event of the season. Also in Indianapolis in April is the inaugural ECNL Regional League Boys Leaders Cup, pitting the best 32 teams from the U17 and U18-19 age groups in a bracket to crown the best RL clubs in those respective age groups. And looking ahead to the 26-27 season, ECNL RL Boys will also introduce similar competitions for the U15 and U16 age groups. The ECNL has dedicated itself to growing the game in Zone 1, and the results are already coming in, according to pre-ECNL Commissioner Bobby Reese. The pre-ECNL's Champions Cup currently sits at nearly 120 teams, with just a few more spots remaining that he expects will go quickly. Next year, the pre-ECNL will add 8 more pre-ECNL Cups, and at the ECNL Coaching Symposium, Reese has already had conversations looking to add more leagues to the platform. Around the league complete, so now we turn it over to the ECNL President and CEO, Christian Lavers.
Thank you very much, Dean. Today it's just me from the Doug and Christian normal conversation, but we are joined by Mr. Jason Kutney, Commissioner of the ECNL Boys. Jason, first appearance on the podcast in 2026 comes in February. It's pretty early in the year.
You can tell when the numbers are dipping that you have to bring me in for to save you guys, you and Doug. So I appreciate that introduction.
Something like that. Doug is on vacation again, doing a good job of getting his mental and physical breaks from the laborious task of youth soccer. So, where do you want to start, Jason? We're at the time of year where it gets a little bit crazy, a little bit interesting, and also where there's tons of misinformation, disinformation, accurate information all blended together into something on social media and everything else. But maybe we start with just an update on ECNL Boys.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the club world, tryout season is always the proverbial silly season. For us, it's a membership season, right, for any league in this country. And tis the season. We just came out of Las Vegas, where we had an awesome AGM and coaching symposium. One of my favorite times of the year for sure, just because we get FaceTime with a lot of the directors in our league that we otherwise wouldn't unless we're on the fields. And it was great because we have those board meetings. We go in there, we talk about membership, we talk about where we are as a league. I think on the boys side, we had a pretty significant growth spurt last year where we added 27 clubs, which was unprecedented for us since maybe since back in the earliest days of the boys side. But we did so because we saw a need to really reward the clubs that were earning it on the fields through the ECNL Regional League, and that was a big part. So 24 out of 27 of those clubs came through the Regional League, which was a huge growth spurt for us, but merited based upon what we see as being the performance at the Regional League level. So I think we're in that similar frame right now where we're looking at all the clubs in the league. There absolutely will be promotions from RL to ECNL this year. We're actually, we've made decisions on some of them right now. We're still waiting on a few more just because the spring season, the early spring season, I should say, in March and early April will give us a few more results to look at. But this is that time of the year where a lot of hard decisions are made, and we really have to reflect upon where we are within each conference to make sure that each conference has the right competitive structure, the right number of games, the right postseason qualification berths, et cetera. So it's a fun time. It's a busy time, but this is why all the clubs work really hard every year in our regional league, is for these opportunities. And for the clubs outside of the league that are pursuing ECNL, it's a great time for us because we meet a lot of great soccer directors and leaders around the country that are all trying to push in that same direction.
So last year, as you said, 26 clubs added into 27. Sorry, I don't mean to sell you short on that. 27 clubs added into the ECNL, most coming directly from the RL on promotion. We're not looking at that same size of expansion this year, right? It's going to be a smaller list of clubs that are moving up. Would you confirm that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we look, leading into last year, we were very consistently in that 5 to 10 club range per year. But when you saw what we saw last year, which was across the country, we had so many clubs performing very well at the regional league level, and we prepared for that. So that was kind of a 3-year phase, and we knew we were going to have that growth spurt. We just didn't know it was going to be 27. I was kind of thinking it was probably in that 15 to 20 range, but we looked at those numbers and we felt very compelled to make the decision. And I think what it's shown us is the more we've done that, the more interest in the ECNL Regional League as a pathway to the ECNL. So it has credentialed that pathway for us, which is important. And it's also let us show people that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And I think ultimately that's the integrity side of it.
So tell me, when we're probably looking at announcements, the first round of promotions, maybe this week or next week, but it's coming imminently. You said there'll be another round of promotions or membership changes probably come late April as the season goes on. What are your timelines?
Yeah, I'm hoping it's not late April. I'm hoping it's mid-April. Tax time is kind of that deadline for us as well with our soccer decisions. So it is youth soccer. It does bring craziness all the time. We know that. But I think between now and the next 45 days, we feel pretty compelled that most of our decisions will be wrapped up at that point.
Okay, so what's the side? The league's now about 160 clubs. Is that right?
165. Yep.
165. See, this is the difference between you and me. You got the details, and I'm in the roundabout area. But 165 clubs in the league. We said we're probably going to be around that size, a little bit bigger next year, but there'll be changes both directions. Over the last 3 or 4 years, there has been a significant amount of change in the league. A lot of that has been growth, but there's also been clubs that are no longer in the ECNL that were at one point. Can you talk through some of the decisions made on that direction? Because we hear a lot from people about it. The pathway and promotions is great, and I think there's really very little that compares to the pathway that we have within the ECNL and the ECNL Regional League, and now really positively with the U.S. Youth U.S. Club collaboration in what they're calling New Comp, with hopefully a name coming any day. But now that pathway going through 3 different levels is really positive going up. Talk about when we have clubs that go down the pathway. What drives that? How do those decisions get made?
Yeah, I mean, we've been very careful on this. We don't have a bright line in terms of relegation, in the same way we don't have a bright line for promotion. But when you look at the statistical analysis, which we go and do multiple times each year, you look for outliers, right? And if a club is certainly struggling, right? Struggling can mean different things. Every league has a first place and a last place club, right? In each conference. That's no different than the English Premier League and the ECNL. But whereas they have a bright line, we don't have that bright line. And so what we try to look at is there a point where if it's a promotion, a club is just considerably above the benchmark. And sometimes for us, we look at the 4 out of 6 age groups, right? So 6 age groups in ECNL, if we are showing dominance in 4 out of those 6 age groups, which typically first or second place in your division or your regional league, then you are what we would consider to be a club that should be discussed for potential promotion. And you look at the flip side of that from an ECNL movement downward, right? If a club 4 out of 6 age groups is in the bottom couple of spots, then it's probably not in their best interest to continue if we're seeing that year over year, right? And what that means is it's probably not healthy for the players because ultimately it has
Well, when you look at that, there's got to be a consideration, I would think, within that to is that a 2-8 record with a negative 20 goal difference, which is, two goals a game, or is that a 0-10 with a negative 60 goal difference, right? Because to your point, there's always a first place and a last place. How do you distinguish between those two examples of performance at the lower end of the table?
Yeah, I think it's the difference between having that conversation, as I mentioned, and then having this statistical outlier, right? Because if you're in the conversation of potential relegation, that means you're down in those spots, right? You're potentially that 2-8 record with the negative 20. That doesn't mean you're getting relegated, right? And I think that's where we're very careful with this bright line because you don't want to paint bright lines because it is club based, right? It's going across 6 age groups. Each individual one of those teams in that club is contributing toward the club's overall performance. But the statistical outlier, what you start to find is the goal differential being one of those things that really pops out on the page. So if you're in a position where you've got 0 wins, 1 win, 2 wins across 5 or 6 age groups, and you see a negative goal differential per age group in the 60 to 70 negative range, you're typically, an average season.
Which, to be fair, there's not a lot of that.
Not a lot,
right? There,
right? But
there is some of that, and part of that, I think,
go ahead.
we've taken a philosophy of, when clubs perform really well in the RL, we've probably promoted more so than not when there's a bubble case, with the sense of let competition sort it out. And if in that process the competition says, hey, there's just a gap between the levels and it's not working, that does happen. But we felt it's better to take that perspective of create more opportunity than it is to restrict opportunity. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you also give the benefit of the doubt, right, when you can. And I think some of that comes down to the leadership of a club. So the structure of a club is not always just on field, right? On field performance metrics are certainly front and center all the time, but the off field piece is very meaningful, right? If clubs have facilities versus don't, right? If teams are showing up at a facility and the goals aren't even put on the field yet, or the nets aren't on the goals, or the lines aren't painted, right? Those are administrative things that we have done a very good job over the last.
Well, those are professionalism, levels of professionalism.
So we've done a good job of ensuring through our host site standards that we don't have those issues. So it's really just focusing more and more on what the club is doing behind the scenes, making sure that they have the player pool, the depth of the player pool, and that those teams are able to compete. And if we see significant negative goal differential with 1 or 2 wins across multiple age groups, we understand that it's time to have a conversation with that club.
So it's really, really simple, is I guess what I heard on all that.
It is. Well, listen, it's never simple because those conversations are always very.
That was sarcastic.
Yeah,
that was sarcastic.
And we take that very seriously, right? Because I think the few phone calls that we get to make every year where we're inviting a new club in because they've earned promotion or they're coming into the ECNL from outside, those are great phone calls, right? We know that there's going to be a lot of excitement on those calls, that we know it can change the trajectory of that club because now they're in a new league and a new platform. But the opposite of that is very true as well. And we want to be very careful that when we have those conversations with clubs, we're giving them an opportunity. And in every single case that we've had, going back since 2019 when I joined the league, whenever we've relegated a club, right, whenever it's been purely based upon performance, separate from standards issues, separate from leadership concerns, if there was just purely based upon performance standards, a club that had to be relegated, we had that opportunity to offer a regional league spot for them, right? And that was super important for us because it's not just taking away and then seeing whatever those 6 teams can go wherever. It was building up the regional league nationally so that we had that quote unquote safety net, a softer landing for those clubs, which we looked at that and said that's commensurate with where the club should be, right? They should go in and they should be able to compete. You look at a club like Oklahoma Celtic a few years ago, they were a club that was relegated from the ECNL Boys. They went to the Regional League Boys. They ended up winning a national championship within the RL a couple of years after that, right? And that's a great success story. One of their players went on to U17 Mexican national team, right? And now he's playing professionally in Mexico. So you look at this and you say, look, there's plenty of these stories that exist, but you have to provide the pathway up and down. It can't just be up.
Well, and I'll jump in on that because I think relegation sometimes is a strong word. Really, what we're talking about here is finding the right level for the most number of players and teams possible. So if you look at the U.S. club structure that was announced before Christmas, you say that third level, the new comp level, again, hoping for a name any day, that is going to be the top team-based competition level in the country. And so there's a lot of clubs, for example, and when we say team-based, we mean you earn your spots from U13 to U18 on an age group by age group basis. There is not you're in as a club, 13 to 18, 6 teams or not. You're in as a team based on performance in the levels going into that. So that there are a lot of clubs that will have one team or two teams that significantly outperform the rest. And that might be the top level of competition that those players and teams should be in. Now, if you have 3 or 4 of the teams that are outperforming, to your point, that's kind of the trigger when you go from a team-based league into a club-based league. All right. And that first level of club-based league, the ECNL Regional League, is a average step up in competition because it requires performance over 6 age groups, not just one. And then within the ECNL Regional League, if you're dominating or performing really well in 4 or 5 age groups in the ECNL Regional League, there's one more step in the pyramid where the competition level gets higher. And what we're really trying to talk about here is the factors of club size, market size are going to impact all of this from team-based to club-based to level of club-based, as well as, and that includes player pool size, resources and infrastructure. Culture plays a part of this. I mean, some places are just bigger soccer culture areas of the country than others. But each level is going to stand on its own merit in terms of competitive value, learning, development, and opportunity. So we want, whether you're in the new comp level, whether you're at the ECNL Regional League level, or whether you're at the ECNL, that you're chasing a championship because that makes it fun and exciting and meaningful, that you have opportunities for showcasing yourself as a player, especially as you get older. On the boys, it's significantly older, but you have opportunities for doing that. And then there's opportunities up and down to get the right number of the right resistance, as we used to say. I mean, I remember back early on in coaching, people would use this sort of hypothesis of the best record for development is something like 6-3-3, and I use that as sort of tongue in cheek, right? But you win 6 games, you lose 3, you tie 3, which is a pretty good marker that you're doing well. So that's good. That's better than being 0-12. But you're not going 12-0. And if you're going 12-0 and you're at the very top of the market, enjoy it because it typically doesn't last that long.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar, the line of pathway for a player and a club, right? Because if you're a player and you're a parent in this country, for instance, that has a young child that's involved in the game, we don't always know whether they're going to start on someone's first team, second team, or third team until they actually get out on the field and start playing, right? And then people start to make decisions from there. It's a very subjective game. So once those decisions start to be made, the next step is for the parent to see, okay, is my child in an environment where they can move up through this pathway, right? Does the club have a history of moving a player from their third team to second team to first team, et cetera? Do they have that structure or not? Because there's a lot of parents that will choose for their child to play on someone's first team instead of someone else's second team, but that's not always the right answer, right? You have to look at things like who are the coaches? What's the network look like? Does that club provide college resources to still move a player up, whether they're on second team or first team, right? Because I think when you look at those systems that are in place for clubs, for players, it's the same thing we look at in terms of clubs, right? We try to find clubs that have the ability and the structure and the wherewithal to put out a good product on the field for 6 age groups. Now it's expanding further into the pre-ECNL and then even further and deeper with the RL. But it's no different, right? We want to make sure that the clubs that are in our league are putting the best foot forward, whether that's for their second team or their first team or their youngest team or their oldest team. And I think when you look at that from a parent perspective, what every parent wants to know is who's telling me the truth and where can I put my child where they're actually going to have a chance to move up the ladder, and is that ladder even in existence, right? Like there's a lot that goes into those questions, but what we try to do is make sense of that very difficult position. And I think the pyramid that has been laid out with US club soccer and US youth with the National League and ECNL and RL, it's at least starting to take steps in that direction that US soccer has put forth as being a big part of what's next, this alignment in this country.
Well, everybody's trying to do that. I think work more and more collaboratively. Obviously, I was in Atlanta this past week at the U.S. Soccer AGM, where there were a lot of meetings and discussions going on between U.S. Club and U.S. Youth and various other organizations that are operating in the youth space. And all those things are positive, and I think there's a positive intent from everybody. It's hard, right? It's hard to put all of these things together, but I think there's a lot of good people working on that from a variety of different organizations. The other piece I'd say to that, and I've said this before, is that we also want vision and values aligned. We want people who want to be a part of the platform that we provide because they believe in what we're trying to achieve and they believe in the ways in which we're doing that. Because as anyone who operates a business, youth soccer is just one of them, would acknowledge, when there is a tremendous instability because somebody's always thinking the grass is greener, or there's unpredictability about the future, it makes it very, very hard to invest and to develop over time and build something with long-term value when you're constantly looking at the shifting sands beneath you. So we talk a lot about this, of wanting clubs who believe in the ECNL vision to provide the best youth sports experience in the world, and then believe in the values by which we chase that vision. Number one being youth soccer should be led by youth soccer experts. We have other values that inform our decisions on a daily basis. But before I dive deeper into that, Jason, give me your perspective on the alignment from a leadership perspective and the vision and values perspective.
Well, the country, if you go back years, right, it used to be very simple. I think when I was growing up, 150 years ago, it was more simple in terms of the soccer that was available because you generally played for your town first, and then you moved on potentially to what was at that time, and at least in New Jersey, called a select team, or and from there you went and went and went. But you knew what to do from a club perspective. You knew what that progression could look like, and then you knew that the ODP system was there to help you with that national exposure. Over time, that's changed drastically, but it's changed just like every youth sport has changed. It's not just soccer. And I think what we look at here is we have to get back to a point where the soccer leaders, even though people have ventured off into different directions over this time, we've all kind of made mistakes. We've all learned valuable lessons that now we can bring back to the drawing board and pull these things together so that eventually they pull through in one direction. So from a value standpoint, the real value is the soccer parent, the family, right? Ultimately, we want them to have a clear picture of what's next. We want them to understand that if their child comes into a certain league, they have a pathway with their club and also individually. And so the leadership, I think, no doubt with what we've seen with U.S. club soccer and with U.S. soccer over this last 6 months, it's been a clear change in the positive direction where everyone is around the same table. And, to your point, being in Atlanta, these meetings, although they happened previously, I don't think they had the same people that were as transparent and as open to sharing as we see right now.
Well, and some of them just didn't happen. Some of those meetings didn't happen, and there's still some work to do in that. But you're right. There's a significant change in the overall culture and environment.
Yeah, and we have to celebrate that, right? I think when you opened with talking about some of the things on social media. Social media is a vacuum into which anything can fly, right? And you can go on social media and post that it's sunny today, and someone will yell at you about global warming and how you're an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about, right? That's generally what we see social media do in this country. And I think when we try to do things like this, there's going to be a lot of naysayers for sure. There's going to be a lot of people that want to pick this apart, but we have to try to move things forward in a direction where it makes more sense for soccer families. And this is one of those moments where I can't say everyone, but many of the major decision makers are around that table trying to make decisions that are in the best interest of youth soccer. And so hopefully, with this all culminating together in one direction, we come out of this in a better spot for the soccer family that can make a more informed decision for their child, and their child can have a better career path.
When we talk about that, I mean, one of our other values, I'll go back to that, is competition. That competition drives performance, and that we have to have clear pathways for players, teams, and clubs within that. And that's a pretty straightforward statement. But I think one of the ways that's lived itself out, and when we talk about having people who are aligned with us on values, is recognizing that the way that you incentivize performance, the way you create a competitive environment for the best teams, players, clubs, whatever, to rise up, there are not bright lines in terms of the process by which that's done. Some clubs have people that play high school soccer. Some clubs do not have kids who play high school soccer. Some clubs play a certain style, and other clubs play a different style. So we've talked about our league being something that's not prescriptive on those things, that's got really bright rules on some of those things, but recognizes that each club and each community and each region of the country is going to have a different way of, for lack of a better word, slicing the onion, and that we want to allow and encourage clubs to solve that problem of competition and performance in whatever way they feel right, and not force everybody into this same box of, you must train this many times, you must not play at this level of soccer, you must only do this type of thing or play that system or that style, whatever it may be. Talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have several conferences on the boys' side where clubs are operating in a 10-month calendar, right? And that's, I think there's a misunderstanding out there in the public space that if you are in the ECNL, you are 100% playing high school soccer. The reality is you are 100% in the position to make that decision for your club, right? And clubs in our
For
league,
yourself.
yeah, and clubs in our league have made that decision where they want to have a 10-month season, and so we support that. In most cases, the clubs do have their players playing high school, right? And that's because the players in those areas want to play high school soccer, right? And you have to respect that, because it's such a dangerous narrative to be out there that if you play high school soccer, you can't go on to play in college, or you can't go on to play professionally. That is blown up every single year, right? That is an absolute untruth that is just, it should not be out there.
Well, and the reason for that, sorry to interrupt on that, but the reason for that is the level of the high school program, the time of the year of the high school program, the restrictions or constraints around the high school program, and the comparison in all those ways to the club program is different in almost every city or every state in the country. So a one size fits all does not address this by saying, if you choose path A, you are guaranteed the promised land, and if you choose path B, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy to the bottom,
Right.
right? There is a lot of crossover in that.
Yeah, it's dangerous, right? I don't, as a soccer person, I played high school soccer. I was fortunate enough to go on and play in college and play professionally. But when I look at high school soccer, that's one of my core memories, right? And I think when you really break it down, and I said this to a parent recently, high school soccer is 3 months a year for 4 years, right? That's 12 months. That's 1 year of your life. So for 1 year collectively of your life, you can have fun and enjoy being big man on campus, right? And going out and representing your community and having those bus rides and those memories that you will never have otherwise, right? And I think when I look back on my career, it's absolutely one of the fondest core memories I had was playing for Freehold Borough High School and winning a state championship, right? And like that's, to me, that's something that I could never trade off, because the value of fun gave me so much confidence. And that confidence absolutely exuded on the field when I went back to my club team. Was my club team playing at a higher soccer level? Yes. But the competitiveness of being double team and triple teamed every single game and having the pressure of trying to lead a team to a win, that means
It's a nice humble brag right there.
no, but you see my point, like that, to me, when we take that away from players because we say you can't reach that level if you do that, is wrong. Right. And I think
Yeah.
it has a very different path in youth soccer, but when we as a league set out, if clubs come to us in a collective mass, like we have in the Mid-Atlantic, for instance, where they'll say, hey, we want to operate on a 10-month platform, we can support that, right? And just the same, in this last 2 years, we've created the Super Cup platform, which has been what it really is our own version of a UEFA Champions League within the ECNL, right? And so now you have top performing clubs that are able to experience something different. It's additive, so they're still playing in their conference games, which means something every single week. But now they have a chance to qualify for something else and play in addition to that.
Yeah, and I'll tie that back again. And, for those that roll their eyes, I'm going to go take back to our values. And one of our values is service, is that clubs are the primary vehicles of player development, and the ECNL exists to serve the needs of the club's directors, coaches, and players. And if I put that value in action, because we talk a lot about taking values from nice buzzwords on a wall and turning them into things that are actually real in the environment, we're not saying that you can't play high school soccer for all the reasons we went to. But we're also not saying you have to play high school soccer. That decision is made by the club expert and the family and the player. What our job is to serve that need by providing the opportunity to do, whether you want to call it a 7-month season or a 10-month season or whatever it may be. And that is aligned 100% with that concept of service and then being led by clubs. And I think, and hopefully you have these at your fingertip, but when you look at the Gatorade High School Players of the Year on one hand, and then you look at the number of ECNL alums, kids from ECNL clubs that were drafted into MLS on the other hand, you have a really good, I think, bookending of that perspective, because you have kids that are high school players of the year that are moving on to college and pro in some way. And then you have a whole bunch of kids that are being drafted that played within the league, some playing 7 months, some playing 10, some playing high school, some not. And I think the numbers, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it 24 Gatorade High School Players of the Year this year?
Yeah, including the National Player of the Year from Pipeline, Dan Klink. Yep.
Yeah. So we have 24 out of the 50 in the states, because it's one state at a time, and then 30 alumni that were drafted into the MLS just in December in 2025, right? Which includes a really high percentage of the players drafted. So you talk about that. Each one of those kids has a different path. Each club that they came from has a different path. Some of them ECNL Regional League clubs, some of them ECNL clubs, some of them kids that have gone from a Regional League to an ECNL, some of them that have won championships in the Regional League and have moved straight from there into the next level of soccer. So you can expand on any of that if you want.
Yeah, no, this was, it's interesting because we all know the challenges especially in men's college soccer, right? There's high hurdles that are on that track right now, right? And we know one of them is the international piece, one of them is the transfer portal, one of them is the age, right? And so when you add all those things together, it's murky waters. But what we looked at when we pull the numbers for every single year's class of 2024, we had 1,670 ECNL boys go on to play in college soccer. And so when we started to pull the class of 2025 numbers together about a month and a half ago, we were nervous, or I was nervous, honestly, that we were going to see a dip because of all these challenges that are in existence. And we kept pulling the numbers, and it's quite a process. It takes quite some time with all the clubs, but we got to the point where we were about 1,900 players this year. So we went up, and it was one of those things where you look at the balance. It's very balanced between Division One, Division Two. Division Three is always a little bit larger, just because it's a larger collective. There's more programs as well, but we were higher in all those categories than we were the year before. And it was shocking to me, right? And so when you take that forward and you look at then the professional side of this, yes, right, you look at this and you say, okay, because I see this on social media quite often that, if the player wants to go on and play college, they go into ECNL. If they want to play in the pros, they go to MLS. It's the same for everyone. We're all developing players, right? They do great jobs in those clubs. We do great jobs in those clubs. And quite often it's the coaches, right? It's the individual coaches for these players that are truly developing players. Christian, you say this all the time, leagues don't develop players, the clubs do and the coaches do. The coaches are the ones spending their time developing these players and creating pathways and picking up the phone call and networking on their behalf and doing all these things in the hours that people don't see, right? But all of these leagues, people like to point to a few of them because we have, a larger name, a larger audience, whatever the case may be, but we're all working for the same end goal, right? To move these players on. So we looked at this and said, wow, 30 out of 90 players drafted into the MLS Super Draft came from the ECNL, but that's 10 out of the first 30 as well on round one, and three out of the top five. Right. So for us, this is a banner year in the sense that, a league that oftentimes is almost chastised for being more focused on college. You can very quickly see that these numbers show that these players from ECNL are going on and doing very well at the professional level. And we love that, right? We want to support and contribute as many players as we can through these clubs and through these coaches who actually develop these players.
Well, and that's part of the what do you call it, intended or unintended value of more collaboration across organizations in the space is that when there is conflict or competition, and again, we believe in competition, but there's healthy and there's less than healthy competition. But that allows simplification into, well, in this one goes this direction, and in this one you go that direction, or in this one you can play here, and in this one you can't play here. And those things really, I think, are unhelpful because at the end of the day, what we really want to be looking at, and the reason that our league, MLS, whoever it may be, that is at the top of this pyramid is not because of those types of things. It's because of the production of the clubs. It's because of the work of the players. And I would like it. I think it'd be valuable where you look at all these kids that make it to whatever level you want to define. So whether that's top 10 college, pro, whether it's college soccer at all, and look at the path and then try and replicate that path for more kids or try and create more openings and opportunities to get on that path because we never know. I mean, you see this all the time. I think, we just had Miracle on Ice Part 2 yesterday, which is unbelievable, by the way. Really, really cool thing. But I was reading briefly this morning, I didn't get into it in too much detail, the American goalkeeper and his path and how he almost didn't make it and how he was not recruited highly and how he was benched and cut at multiple stages along the way as an older player. And I say that because you never know. And the people who sit here and say they can predict greatness at these young ages are just full of it when it comes down to it, because the record is full of players that chart their own course and create their own path. And what is common is they believe in themselves. They have people around them that believe in them and support them. And they create opportunity where academics would say none should exist. And I think that's part of the value of if we can focus less on competition and more on collaboration from a competitive pathway perspective, then you start to really free up those players and teams and coaches and directors to chart that path.
Yeah, and if you use that example of the U.S. men's hockey team, kudos to the women's team as well, because I think owning hockey now over the Canadians for the next 4 years will be a thorn in their side, of course. But I made sure to reach out to all my Canadian teammates over the years. But I think when you look at what we took from that game, right, and what I personally took from that game is no one, right? Did Canada dominate the game? Did they dominate possession? Did they dominate shots? Yes, right. Did they win? The answer is no, right? U.S. won, and I think what won that game was this spirit, right? We call it nowadays the dog in them, but we had that spirit amongst that team that we weren't going to lose. We were going to win, right? We just weren't willing to lose in that game, no matter whether we lost 2 teeth, half of teeth, right? Whatever. But we weren't going to lose because we were going to fight. And what that fight showed to me was, and I think we've talked about this before relative to the U.S. men in the World Cup coming up, no one's going to care about the style of their play if they go on and win it and go all the way to the whatever round, right? The 8, the 4, the 2. It's about getting there and showing that spirit. And I think what we saw with that hockey team, they went out there and they did something that was just unbelievable, right? First time in what, 46 years to the day that we've advanced, right? And that's crazy in and of itself. But it was just the spirit of the players, right? Like they truly bought into this culture that we were going to win. And I think the interviews that came out after the fact were remarkable because they were all about the same thing. Everyone said the same thing, that they were putting the country first. They were putting the brotherhood first, right? They were going out there to win for each other. And I think when we look at this from the standpoint of a club developing players and the culture that you have to develop within those teams, this is why we see around the country that coaches develop teams and players. because everyone in their own community, everyone that's listening to this is in a community somewhere where they know that one or two coaches in that area that always get the best players. Well, why is that? Right? Why do those coaches always get the best players? Is it because they're doing something, he or she is doing something really right by those players? Usually that's the case, right? They're creating the right environment and training. They're helping that player along. They're getting them to the right events, right? Whatever tournament that's going to be. They're networking with the right U.S. national team scouts or the colleges. They're doing those things. And we as a league try to celebrate those clubs that have those coaches, because ultimately we're setting up a framework within which they can be successful, right? We're not the reason they're successful. We're providing that framework for them.
Well, and I'll wrap this up with, our one of our last value here, because I think this is a great sort of connectivity point, is aspiration. And that not only do we have to have minimum and standards and expectations, everybody talks about that. I think that's kind of the lazy part of the argument. But you have to have, as we put it, an intentionally created culture that inspires achievement of the highest standards and expectations. And I think when you look, I remember, I mean, I wasn't old enough to remember watching Miracle on Ice in 1980, but I was watching American Olympic hockey, I remember in high school in 1992 with exceptional excitement that was tied back to the Miracle on Ice, which I don't remember, as I would have been 4 years old at that time. And I think creating that type of environment, that win will inspire hockey players for the next generation, both men and women, to be fair. And so we talk about the men's game because you're on the podcast on the boys side, and obviously that was the last game. But wins like that, same as the U.S. women in the Olympics, they inspire people for a very long time. And we talk about trying to create that type of environment within our league, is how do we make this league experience, we being not just the league staff and the league organization, but in concert with the clubs and the directors and the coaches, how do we create an experience that is really unmatched, that inspires people to want to be great? And, one of the things, and maybe we'll let the cat out of the bag here a little bit because we announced it already in the at the ECNL Symposium, but the ECNL International IBERCUP, which will be here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and a shout out to NCFC for helping us and putting this event on in Labor Day in just whatever that is, 6-7 months. We've announced the first 5 clubs that are coming there to play at U11 or U12 boys: AC Milan in Italy, Benfica from Portugal, Grêmio from Brazil, Manchester United from England, and Yokohama Marinos from Japan. You talk about an environment that is going to be inspirational and aspirational. That tournament is going to provide an incredible set of competition with some of the biggest names in the world, with amateur teams also from countries all over the world, which just ties back to, I bring this all back full circle to alignment in vision and values with clubs and coaches and league. And if we do that all well, then we create an unbelievable opportunity for players to chart their own path up through the levels, and for teams and clubs to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that, that opportunity that we've created with the IBERCUP and Coach's Voice, you look at these things, those are for U11 and U12s, right? A lot of times when you see these types of events, generally speaking, you see American teams going overseas to participate in one of these events, right? This is coming to the US, but it's also for the youngest age groups, right? And it's in a unique format of 7v7, right? So I think what we have to look at here is the opportunities that we try to create in this league are for everyone that's in this league, right? Across the entire spectrum of what we see, every age, every level. And that's what's important to us, right? We're a nonprofit that is out here in the youth space trying to create opportunities for young players, right? And when you look at that, that's our mission, right? That's ultimately when we draw all our lines, it comes out of trying to create opportunities for these kids, the best youth sports experience we can possibly create in the world, right? Well, you have to then bring the world here at times. You have to bring our teams to the world, right? And the event we have with Everton this May as well, with our, the slightly older, and you go into that 13, 14 age range of those players going overseas. So now we're starting to really create this world that recognizes ECNL as a youth soccer brand, And the more we can connect to those different people around the world that are doing things well and doing things really well in some cases, and we're learning from them, but they're also now starting to learn from us in certain things that we have going on. And I think that's, to me, the more we can make this feel like a collective force pushing these players forward, the more these players will believe that they've got an opportunity and a chance. And I don't know about you, Christian, when I was a U11 or U12, I wasn't playing against Manchester United, right? It's one of those things that to me that would be, it passes the sniff test of, does this smell like something that I would really like to eat? You know what I mean? Like, holy cow, imagine having that opportunity as a young player. And when I think back, and in my reference to high school soccer before, these are all those moments in my life that I think were profoundly impactful on me as a person. And if we can create those opportunities for players at every age, from pre-ECNL all the way up through the 18-19s and beyond, then we've done our job.
Well, and we would be remiss not to mention the teams that those boys are playing. So kudos again to Eastside, NCFC, Oklahoma Energy, and Crossfire Academy, who are going over to the Everton International. But they'll be faced off against, again, some of the biggest names in the world. Chelsea, Everton, obviously hosting it at their famous Finch Farm training ground, Leeds United, and Wrexham. And, a lot of America now knows about Wrexham that wouldn't have known anyway, which is kind of a cool tie-in with an American owner there and a documentary around that. Hopefully we can get some extra PR from that. So here's a hope for that. But incredibly aspirational environments for these kids, earned based on performance. Super excited about all this. We could go on and on about the league and why we do what we do and how we try and provide the right fit. But I think this discussion gives a good, for lack of a better word, 20,000-foot perspective of it. I appreciate your time on it. There's going to be announcements coming here from us, from US Club, from other organizations here for several months as soccer goes into, whatever it's going to be, soccer 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever this next evolution is referred to as. But I think we feel really good about it. We feel really good about where the league is. We feel really good about where the league is in relationship to the rest of the space, and grateful, I think, not only to our leadership like yourself, Jason, but also to the leadership and trust of the clubs and the coaches that are in our league for being with us for the long term and for buying into that vision. So I'll give you last thought. No Bracken Brainbuster today since he's, lazily on vacation again. But we'll call this Jason Kutney's close. How about that? See what I did there?
Wow. An impromptu one as well. That's a high pressure situation. I think my close would be, this is the time of the year, and I'm a soccer parent now. I'm also a coach, so I have to bridge the gap between those two moments of sanity and insanity. You figure out which one's which. But I think when you look at it from the standpoint of what is going on in the youth soccer space, knowing that we have the change from birth year to the August 1 date, knowing that we have, so much information or misinformation, however you want to look at it, available on social media and every avenue, and knowing that the FOMO is such a real thing amongst parents that if, God forbid, the rest of the kids on the team are doing this futsal event or this 3v3 or this individual training and we're not, or we're missing out. I think the thing that everyone always needs to remember is that everyone is on their own unique journey, right? And everyone's journey is going to be different. And it's those that spend all their energy comparing their own child's journey to another are the ones that usually have the darkness at the end of the tunnel, right? And I think what we want to do is create the light at the end of the tunnel for as many families as possible. And I encourage families to just do your own research, find the right club for your child, find the right team within the right club, and the right coach within the right team within the right club for your child, because ultimately those are the people that are going to help set that world on fire for that child and really show them the right way or the wrong way, and you got to spend a lot of time discerning between those two. But at the ECNL, I can say we've certainly spent a lot of time trying to find the right people that manage the right clubs. And usually those right people do a good job of finding the right coaches. And so, I'm proud to be a part of this league. I think what we've seen over the last few years, I coach on the girls side at the pre-ECNL level and the ECNL level, and I run it on the boys side. But everyone that's involved in this league deeply cares about youth soccer. And it goes back to the point that you made earlier, that it's the people that care about youth soccer that should run youth soccer. And the parents that are out there working for their child in youth soccer ask questions of the right people in that youth soccer space, right? Don't always take what you read on on a social media post as being the Bible here. Make sure you ask the questions of the right people.
So you close with a Russian doll, Matryoshka, I believe they're called, of the team, the coach within the team, within the club, within the environment. So thank you for that, Jason. Appreciate it, Jacob. Reed, as always, appreciate it, Dean. Kudos to everybody mentioned in the around the league. Really cool stuff going on in that all over the league. And if you have achievements and things that you'd like recognized, please reach out to us. And a little plug as well for the monthly ECNL in Action, which is the top plays across the league. You can find those first week of every month. Those are released, and the quality of play and performance in those, the goals, the saves, the plays is fantastic, and it speaks far more than any sort of marketing glitz, glamour, puffery could do to see the level just speak for itself on tape. So thanks to everybody. And we'll wrap that podcast here next time. I guess, unfortunately, Mr. Bracken will probably be back with us, Jason, and you will be probably not, but we'll keep the door open.
Appreciate that.
Want the same expert advice from the pros at a discount tire store while shopping online? Meet Treadwell, your personal tire guide. Whether you're driving to practice or game day, Treadwell gives you tire recommendations based on your vehicle, location, and driving habits. Get matched with the perfect tires so you can stay focused on the goals that matter most. Shop with Treadwell at discounttire.com. Did you know ECNL provides free recovery sessions? ECNL has partnered with MarkPro, a staple for recovery in professional sports. MarkPro is a unique, safe, portable e-stim device that feeds sore muscles and removes metabolic waste. Stop by the recovery zone during your next event. The ECNL is pleased to announce Quick Goal as the official goal provider and partner for ECNL Girls and ECNL Boys, a new partnership created to support the growth and development of the country's top players, clubs, and coaches at all national events, including national playoffs and national finals. The Quick Goal Coaches Corner will provide hospitality and social space for ECNL Girls, ECNL Boys, and collegiate coaches. Quick Goal will also be the presenting sponsor of the National Championship winning ECNL Girls and ECNL Boys Coaches of the Year and the ECNL Girls and ECNL Boys Goals of the Year. Quick Goal looks forward to helping the ECNL continue to elevate the standards of youth soccer and provide more opportunities to players on and off the field in the coming years.